For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
10 months into the Russia-Ukraine war, one thing that is becoming clear is the shortage of ammunition on both sides and the problem that both sides will face to prolong the war. What implications it has for geopolitics and what are the lessons India can learn from this development is the subject of this week's Ask Nitin. I'm Nitin Gokhale. So as the war drags on in Ukraine and Russia makes some gains and then withdraws and then Ukraine makes some gains, one unknown or little reported fact that is coming out now is the shortage of ammunition that Ukraine is facing because of low stocks that NATO countries and even the US has as far as artillery and tank ammunition is concerned. And it's a problem that is much bigger than just supplies. According to multiple reports in European media as well as amongst the American analysts, it is now becoming clear that while Europe had scaled down production of tank and artillery ammunition over the past 2 decades or so, thinking that there will be no prolonged war and all the future wars will be fought on technology and through asymmetric or information war will be the norm of the day. The Americans also had not stockpiled too much ammunition for spares or too much ammunition to spare to give it to Ukrainians or any other allies. Now that is becoming very evident. According to one report of the British think tank, the RUSI, Royal United Services Institute for Defence, and its security studies, during the fiercest fighting in Donbass, the Ukrainian armed forces fired as much artillery ammunition in 1 week as the British Army has in its total stockpile. Now you can imagine that how the planning has gone awry in some of these armies in Europe and in amongst the NATO members. The Czechoslovakian arms maker, one of the office bearers there has said that 40,000 artillery shells were fired by Ukraine each month over the last 10 months. That means the amount of ammunition spent was much more than even all the NATO countries combined could really provide. Having supplied whatever stocks they had to Ukraine, now the European and the American allies are scrambling to ramp up production. Now there are several issues here. The industrial capacity in Europe has gone down. The assembly lines were either wound up or scaled down. There was no investment, fresh investment in trying to have this capacity for ammunition production. And now the private players, ammunition suppliers or manufacturers in Europe and US are unwilling to manufacture until firm orders are given. Now, firm orders would mean huge amounts of money to be given in advance. According to one estimate, Germany would want to give something like 100 billion euros for ammunition supplies for replenishing whatever has been spent over the past 10 months or so. Whereas the demand is for 100 billion euros, they have just placed orders for 1.1 billion euros. That's the kind of gap between demand and the funding that is available in Europe. And that is going to be a major problem for Ukraine going forward. What about Russia? Well, it also faces shortage, but Russia has stockpiles that can last for at least another couple of years is one estimate of one of the magazines in US, one of the defense magazines. And that is because Russia also supplies ammunition to other countries, including to India. And therefore, it has stocks that will outlast whatever the NATO and the US allies can provide to Ukraine. So let me give you some figures. While the Europeans and the Americans have been very supportive of the Ukrainian war effort, the figures provided by some of the defense watchers and defense analysts says that according to the US Army itself, The Americans are currently producing only between 12 to 15,000 shells, artillery shells, 155 artillery shells per month. Whereas, as I mentioned, the Ukrainians are expending more than 40,000 shells a month, which means there is a huge gap between what is being produced and what is being expended by the Ukrainians. And therefore, there is a serious problem that they foresee, all the analysts as well as the American military leadership, where Western production capacities are not able to meet the demands, they are reaching their limits. And therefore, there is a doubt that what will happen in case this conflict widens. There is, of course, the perpetual funding versus demand problem. And while the NATO nations have reduced their capacities, they had also reduced their funding for artillery ammunition, tank ammunition, and generally about ammunition, they were little reluctant to invest more than required. And the understanding in NATO was that there will be no old style World War II type wars that will be fought on the European continent. All those assumptions have been thrown out of the window precisely because the Russians are fighting the old style war by bringing in the tanks, the artillery, and trying to pound some of the civilian areas through the kind of wars that were fought in the olden days. Therefore, now the challenge for many of these countries is how to ramp up production. Now, unless orders are given, firm orders are given, advance funding is made to the private industry, nobody is willing to put their own investments, the private companies, into producing ammunition that is required by Ukraine, especially against Russia. So, what are the lessons for India in this? While there was an assumption last year after the Azerbaijan-Armenia war that UAVs and drones and armed drones will play a major part and there will be no role for tanks and armored personnel carriers or artillery guns for wars in the future. The entire assumption has now been turned on its head, going by what has happened in Russia and Ukraine. And therefore, India will have to now draw some lessons from here, that while technology has advanced, while UAVs and unarmed platforms will be, or autonomous platforms will be the way forward in some cases, you cannot do away with your heavy weaponry, heavy platforms like tanks, especially given the fact that India is faced with two major adversaries who also have major armor and artillery components in their military doctrines as well as in their employment of tactics and strategies against India. So, what will India have to do? India will have to ramp up ammunition production on its own, while the plan to source or outsource ammunition to private players has been in the works for the past 7 years now. The production rate in the private sector hasn't improved precisely because the Indian military has been reluctant to place too many orders on the private players. The OFB, as all of you know, the Ordnance Factory Board has been split into 7 different entities, and some of them have now become verticals on their own, producing ammunition, producing the required missiles and rockets for the Indian military. But that rate of production is not keeping up with the demand that India needs. And therefore, the lesson here is that you not only have to give the ammunition orders to private players as well as some of the older players from carved out of the OFB, but also stockpile ammunition which can last not just for 10 days, for more than 10 days or maybe 20 or 25 days. Given the fact that the Russia-Ukraine war has now shown the world that the era of the old wars is not yet over. It might happen anytime, or it might be a mixed kind of a war between the different adversaries that India faces. So therefore, this is something that India is looking at. This is also a huge opportunity for Indian players, Indian ammunition manufacturers, Indian OFB carved verticals into the ammunition space, as well as private players in India, to export ammunition from India to European countries, because European countries are not willing to spend money, or at least invest money in private players. And the cost of production in Europe is also going up because of the cost of wages is going up in Europe because of the higher inflation that the continent is facing. Even the US is facing higher inflation, which is unprecedented in its history since World War II. Therefore, the fact here is that this is both an opportunity as well as a warning for India, that it must stockpile its ammunition for future wars, which may last more than what has been estimated, and also make sure that this opportunity to export ammunition from India is grabbed, is utilized for ramping up exports from India. That's the lesson that I think Indian military as well as the Indian industry must draw from what is happening in Russia. One small anecdote or one small fact that has escaped many people's attention here, and I was reading it somewhere, I thought I'll bring it to your attention, is that while Ukraine had huge stockpiles of ammunition post the Crimea annexation by Russia in 2014, it was anticipating similar action by Russia against Ukraine for these 7 years. It had stockpiled a lot of ammunition to last for more than 5 or 6 months. But now it appears, according to Forbes magazine, that the Russian agents or Russian saboteurs actually blew up something like 210,000 tons of ammunition in various depots of Ukraine in these past 4 or 5 years, before the war started, which was not noticed by many people, but now the fact is coming out, which means the Russians knew exactly where the strength of the Ukrainians lay, that they had the ammunition to last for a longer time, but they have gone and hit those depots and destroyed the ammunition that would have helped Ukrainians fight the longer war. But because the ammunition stocks were depleted through sabotage and through various means of sort of attacking these depots, I think the Ukrainians had to depend on supplies from the US and other NATO allies. And now even those stocks are running out, and there is not enough production to make up for the demand that the Ukrainians have against Russia. That's where the current war is, and according to what we now hear and see, and hear President Putin saying that this war will get prolonged, there is no end to this war very soon. This is going to be a problem for Ukraine, which I think is also a wake-up call for the NATO as well as the US, that you cannot draw down your industries, you cannot sort of lose the appetite for war as Europe has done. And therefore, another lesson for India here, which I'm sure Indian national security managers are actually looking at very seriously and then taking remedial measures. I thought I'll flag this for you because while attention is on the overall result or overall the direction of the Russia-Ukraine war, these small portions of or small matters in the war are not really looked at. And since I sort of got a hint from some of the articles that have come up and some of the people who are involved in manufacturing of ammunition in India and in Europe, I thought I'll flag this for you. I don't have any queries from anyone in this program because this was not given enough notice about, and therefore I'm not going to take any questions here. But as we wind down to end of 2022, there will be one more program that I'll be doing on Ask Nitin before we sort of sign off for this year in 2022. I wanted to say this, that maybe there will be a different format of this program going forward in 2023, but we will announce and we will let you know what exactly that form will be or that program will take and how we'll go about it. But for the time being, do keep watching StratNews Global. You know where to reach us. Your feedback and your comments are extremely important. So I will wait for that. And let us know if we can do some more programs, more information that you require. For the time being, it's goodbye.
For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
The much publicized clash between Indian and Chinese troops on December 9th at a place called Yangtze in Arunachal Pradesh has once again focused attention on the vulnerability of the eastern sector of the India-China border. Is Tawang still vulnerable? And why is Tawang such a sensitive issue between India and China? Is the topic of this week's Ask Nitin. I'm Nitin Gokhale. So let's cast our mind back to 1987 when at a place called Sumdarongchu there was a standoff between Indian and Chinese troops that lasted for nearly 7 years. Or go further back to 1962 when the main battle between the PLA and the Indian Army troops took place in the Kameng sector in western Arunachal Pradesh, bordering Tibet. Or further still, go back to 1959 when His Holiness the Dalai Lama entered India into Arunachal Pradesh, what was then known as NEFA or Northeast Frontier Agency, from a place called Kinzamane, north of Tawang. So Tawang has a history and has a very checkered history. It has a monastery, one of the oldest and the biggest Buddhist monasteries in this part of the world. It was part of the Tibet kingdom up to 1951 when India and specifically Major Bob Cutting with his Assam Rifles troops went and took control of Tawang in that year, in February 1951, to bring the Tawang Tract and part of that NEFA, which was Northeast Frontier Agency, into or under Indian control. Since then, Tawang has been one of the more sensitive places, sensitive locations in negotiations between Indian and Chinese negotiators, diplomats, military personnel and military leaders. Why is that? That's because one of the holiest places apart from the monastery is the Gyatse waterfall near Yangtze, where the December 9 clash took place between India and China. It is considered one of the holiest places by the Tibetans who want to come to Gyatse, which is actually under the supervision or under the gaze of the Indian soldiers from the ridgeline at Yangtze. Ever since the Sundarangchu standoff that I spoke about in the mid-80s between Indian and Chinese troops took place, it was essentially Indian domination of this sector at Yangtze and around has really rattled the Chinese, and constantly, not just that time but also during the Kargil crisis in the summer of 1999, the Chinese have been trying to wrest control of the Yangtze plateau, which includes the Gyatse waterfall which I mentioned briefly. Now, India has a very strong position which is in the higher reaches of that ridgeline, and therefore in a position where watch can be kept, a very strict watch can be kept on Chinese movements from the valley coming up to the Yangtze plateau. And the Chinese have been trying forever to gain control of this plateau so that they can in turn peep into the other side towards the Sela Pass in India, or Sela Pass near Bomdila, which leads to Tawang, the single road that connects the plains of Assam from Bhalukpung or Tejpur to Tawang via Bomdila, Sela, and then coming further to the Jung Falls, where the line of the supply lines are actually maintained through this road. Although in the past 10 years or so, an alternate route which is called OKSRT, the Orang, Kalaktang, Sepa, Rupa and Tenga route has come up close to the Bhutan border. The fact is the main artery connecting Tawang to Tejpur goes through Sela, and that entire road comes under observation from the Yangtze plateau. Therefore, Yangtze is important, and therefore Tawang which is the temporal seat of the Buddhist in Arunachal Pradesh in many ways. The Monpas, of course, dominate the area in Tawang, or the district of Tawang. The current Chief Minister of Arunachal Pradesh, Pema Khandu, comes from the Tawang district. In fact, his constituency is very close to Yangtze. His father, also a former Chief Minister who died in an air crash in Tawang, in a helicopter crash, also, of course, was a native of Tawang. But more than anything else, Tawang, as I said, is revered by the Buddhists, by the Tibetans, by the Monpas, and a number of times Tawang has featured in discussions between Indian and Chinese negotiators. At some point, the Chinese have also mentioned that South Tibet is important for them because it's important for the Tibetans under the Chinese occupation, living in Lhasa and elsewhere, and therefore they want to wrest control, which is, of course, a very specious argument. But the fact is, Tawang remains a very sensitive location. So what has India done to protect this sensitive location? From the mid-80s, the Indian military or the Indian army has actually beefed up the security of the Tawang tract or the Tawang sector continuously. Earlier, there used to be one division, the division located in Tenga, looking after the entire Tawang frontier, both east and west of the town, east and west of the road. And one brigade based in Tawang used to look after the entire sector or the stretch. From the 2000s and subsequently from 2012, for the last decade or so, one more division has been inducted and based in the plains of Assam, on the foothills of the lower Himalayas or the western Himalayas at Misamari. And that division now and brigades under that division look after part of the Tawang, the old comprehensive Tawang sector. So between the division at Tenga and the division at Misamari, the entire West Kameng district or the West Kameng sector has been taken care of. So instead of one division earlier, you now have two divisions looking after the security of the Tawang tract or the Tawang sector. There is also the backup of the 21 division based in Rangia, which has dual tasking of counterinsurgency in Assam, looking after the Bhutan border with Assam, and if need be, can be inducted into the West Kameng sector or the Kameng sector whenever required. So the security has been beefed up tremendously in this sector because this was the place in which the Chinese overran the Indian military in a very brutal manner. The first shot was fired at Thagla Ridge and at Hatungla in 1962, to be precise on 20th October 1962. And of course, simultaneously raids were launched in Ladakh, at Galwan and other places. But the setback for the Indian army in 1962 was mainly in the Tawang sector, where the army kept retreating, kept falling back, and finally was pushed down to the plains of Tejpur. The Chinese troops reached up to Bhalukpung, but then retreated hastily because they couldn't sustain the supply lines and sort of withdrew unilaterally on 20th November 1962 back to their positions beyond the Bumla Pass, through which they came in 1962, pushing back the Indian army down to the plains of Tejpur. Since then, the sector in the Indian minds of the Indian national security planners and the Indian military has been very high, the sensitivity about Tawang. And therefore, as I said, security has been beefed up. The weather there is extremely unpredictable. And the fact is that helicopters cannot fly there with any guarantee because the weather packs up, the monsoons are very active, the rains are very heavy, and the fog is a killer. In this sector, the roads also used to be very preliminary, very primitive modes of transport had to be used. A lot of mules had to be used to carry loads onto the forward bases along Yangtze, Mago, Chuna, Kinzamane, Lungpo, And you talk about these places, the deployment was not easy and the sustenance was more difficult. But over the years, especially over the last decade or so, many roads have been built, many roads have been extended to the forward bases. Supply lines go right up to the posts along the LAC, the line of actual control, or the McMahon line as it is called in this sector. And one of the setbacks that the Chinese still sort of are angry about is the control of the Yangtze ridgeline. So the answer to the question that why Yangtze has been provided in a piece written by one of the former corps commanders of 4 Corps in Tejpur, Lieutenant General Shantanu Dayal, wrote a piece for us for our sister concern bharatshakti.in just about a fortnight ago, just after the 9th December clash, where he has explained beautifully why Yangtze. And therefore, I don't want to waste your time. Please do read that piece and see why Yangtze is important. I've explained it briefly, of course, in the beginning of this program. But apart from Yangtze, there is the fact that, apart from the Yangtze clash, there's a fact that many of these dual-use villages are coming up along that border, where the Chinese troops can actually use those villages for launching attacks. And India's stand has been that these villages are not meant for civilians in Tibet, but meant mainly for use by the military. And therefore, it's a strategic challenge. India, of course, has to improve its infrastructure much beyond what it is right now in that sector and elsewhere along the Chinese border. But the fact is, Tawang remains the focal point of any negotiation, any discussion between Indian and Chinese sides, precisely because of the reasons that I have already explained. So, what should India do? Well, India will have to double its efforts in keeping the vigil. It will have to also make sure that all the roads which are difficult to build on the Indian side because of the steep gradient that the engineers and construction workers have to climb, and also that the road has to be maintained. All that will remain a challenge, but India has to redouble those efforts and also get the Sela Pass tunnel, which is under construction going, which will give all weather, all year-round connectivity between Tejpur and Tawang. And just one road will not do. Although I mentioned that OKSRT road is now active and open for traffic, that needs to be strengthened and maintained throughout the year so that India is not vulnerable and dependent only on one road from Tejpur to Tawang, which is what it has been for a number of years. The Chinese, of course, will like nothing better than gaining control of Tawang if there is a hot war somewhere, because it is a prize that they have been waiting for quite some time. Having occupied Tawang in the aftermath of the 1962 war and also then vacated as they withdrew unilaterally, that area remains a prize catch for the Chinese, and India has to make sure that they don't get that prize at whatever cost. So therefore, Tawang remains the focal point, and deployment around Tawang remains the priority for the Indian Army. So far, it is in an advantageous position, it is in a dominant position in Tawang. That position must be maintained, because if Tawang was to be attacked or Tawang was to come under siege, the next defensive line is at Sela. And therefore, there are many implications to this kind of a situation if there is a major conflict between India and China. But we'll talk about that in some other episode. And of course, also bring to you maybe ground reports from that area whenever possible. I have been there a number of times since I was stationed in Guwahati for a number of years, but a fresh look is perhaps warranted now. But when will that happen? One will have to see. But for the time being, this is what I had to flag for you, that why Tawang is important, why Tawang is sensitive. Of course, there are questions from our viewers on this program, and I'll take those questions one by one as I go along. And as I mentioned earlier, many people do not want to come on the on the video or on the screen, but there are these written questions that have come to us this time, 3 of them in fact. There is, let me see, the first one is from somebody called Trixoli, and the question is slightly confounding for me, but let me read out that question and attempt an answer. It says, can thank the Dino dictator for flare up in clashes with their agents in India peddling the narratives of PLA being the stronger than reality. Well, what basically this viewer is saying is that there is a double attack on India. One is, of course, the clash or the provocation that was undertaken by the Chinese in Yangtze, the physical provocation against Indian troops. And the second is that disinformation campaign launched by the Chinese using India's open society, open media, free media to peddle the narrative that PLA is now a very strong military force. Maybe their soldiers are 7 and 10 feet tall. All that again they're trying to peddle, but the fact is disinformation has a very limited life. Everybody now knows that India is in a very strong position, strong defensive position. Let me clarify this. All along the LAC with Tibet, and therefore one need not fear too much about what's happening. These skirmishes will go on, they will only increase because India is also now becoming more and more assertive. That's my answer to the first question. The second question is by Nirod Chaki, and the question is, or the statement is, salami slice method adopted by China in capturing the territory of its neighboring countries is well known to India and to all countries. Then is it not possible for India to enter Chinese territory and capture a salami slice? It is difficult, but that approach has to be adopted by India sooner or later. Well, Nirod, I think this has been talked about at a number of times on television, in media, during discussions. The fact is, there exists what is called a QPQ option with every Indian Army formation. QPQ is quid pro quo, that if China comes and occupies or attempts to occupy one position along or one section of the border, or the area between or along the LAC, then there is an option for India to go and occupy some of those unheld positions which will be disadvantageous to the Chinese. But all that is meant for what is called the hot war or implications of the hot war. If there is a real conflict that happens where there is a clash of arms, then these options are exercised. So don't be despondent. There is no reason for you to believe that China has come and occupied Indian land or Indian positions in Yangtze or in Tawang. They have driven away, as you are aware, and there was a big clash, but the Chinese were prevented from wresting control of the Yangtze plateau or the Yangtze peak, and therefore there is no such, there should be no such apprehension about the Chinese occupation of any land in India. The third question is from Vineet Alurkar, and this is a question. Do you think there is a long-term strategy in dealing with these repeated incursions by China, or are we stuck in policy paralysis? Is there a serious rethink on part of army and the government, or are we a default resigned to reacting every time China decides to poke us? Very relevant question. The fact is that most of the Indian proactive incidents or proactive operations do not get reported. All of us have this impression that India is reacting to Chinese provocation, Chinese moves, and therefore only responding whenever there is a provocation, is because by its very nature, media reports only attempts by the Chinese to do incursions or come into Indian territory, do ingress. The reality is that India also does a lot of these operations which keep the Chinese on tenterhooks, keeps the Chinese at bay, but those never get reported because that's not Indian Army's nature to come and speak about it publicly. So therefore, rest assured that the security along the McMahon line or the LAC is completely under control. The Chinese will try, as I said in earlier programs, attempt to try and change the status quo on the LAC, But because of heavy deployment and constantly improving vigil, the ISR capability, that is the intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance capability, the attempts and repeated attempts such as these on such as what happened in Yangtze will be prevented, will be foiled. So rest assured on that count. So very relevant question, and I must thank all of you for being such cooperative and engaging audience all along in this Ask Nitin program. But I have an announcement to make that from January 2023, in the new year, we'll have a new beginning, or rather a new beginning for an old program called Simply Nitin. Only because Ask Nitin was meant to be a forum for you to come on screen and interact with me on a live program. But since many of you are shy, many of you are not willing to show your face on the screen in a live program, I have decided to go back to the old format and the old name, where you supported us hugely, made it a very must-watch program, and therefore I'm going back to the name called Simply Nitin every Saturday at 7 p.m. on StratNews Global YouTube channel. So do watch that program that time. I, of course, before signing off, I want to talk about some of the books that you must read if you want to know more about Tawang and the importance of Tawang. One is, of course, former Foreign Secretary Nirupama Rao's program, The Fractured Himalaya, which she has published earlier this year. And then there are two books which I am showing only one of them. India's China War, written by an Australian journalist, Neville Maxwell, largely based on leaked documents of the leaked portions of the Henderson Brooks Bhagat, General Bhagat report on the aftermath of the causes for the 1962 conflict. And there is a book by Brigadier John Dalby called Himalayan Blunder, John Dalby was the brigadier commanding the brigade, 7th Brigade in Tawang in 1962, who took the brunt of the first attack and was taken prisoner by the Chinese in 1962. That is there. There are a number of other books people have written. So do read these books. They give you a peep into the history, the causes, the consequences of what happened in the 1950s, late 1950s, early 1960s. And some of them later written by somebody like Arjun Subramaniam on full spectrum war, on India's wars. All these books are useful for you to read and get a sense of the geography, sense of the history, sense of the operations of the Indian Army and the deployment and the role of the non-deployment of the Indian Air Force in 1962, and so many other aspects of that particular region and the war that took place 60 years ago. This has been a great year in many ways for StratNews Global. For me personally, it's been a wonderful journey despite some of the setbacks. So I wish, and this is going to be the last program of the year, so let me wish all of you Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year for 2023. May you prosper, may you get all your wishes fulfilled in the new year. But till we meet again in the first week of January, it's goodbye from me. Thank you for being here.
For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
Hello and welcome to StratNews Global. This week, I am in Taiwan's capital, Taipei, visiting this country for the first time at the invitation of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of China, Taiwan. What has been the experience so far? Well, I find, at least from my limited interaction with people, this nation is on the move, but also anxious at the same time. We're going to talk about all that in this week's Ask Nitin. I'm Nitin Gokhale. Later in the program, two guests will join me. One from Taiwan itself, both Indians, of course, and the other from India. And both of them have experience of having lived in Taiwan and also experienced the society here, having gone around the country, learned the language, that is Mandarin, and worked here. I will introduce them as we ask them to join a little later. But first, my first impressions about this country and where it is after the anxious moments in August this year, when People's Republic of China across the Taiwan Straits actually initiated a blockade and conducted massive air and naval exercises to intimidate Taiwan rather, because they had dared host the US politician, US Speaker Nancy Pelosi. That has been a bone of contention about government officials from other big countries coming to Taiwan, has been objected to by China massively. But the show of force in August has ignited the old debate about what China is going to do. Is it going to invade Taiwan in the near future, or is it just trying to intimidate and coerce Taiwan through these tactics? This debate is now raging in the civil society here in Taipei, as well as in the government circles. The relevant authorities are also building scenarios, looking at gaming the whole scenario that may possibly occur if the People's Republic of China under Xi Jinping decides to invade Taiwan. In fact, I've heard this question from my colleagues. I'm here as part of a big delegation of journalists from across the world, 32 of them, in fact, from all the continents. In fact, I'm very happy to have met journalist friends from Brazil, Chile, um, also Nigeria, even European countries, Germany, France, Spain. There are three reporters from the US. There is also a reporter from Guam. There is somebody from Tuvalu in the South Pacific region, which is a very small country but very important for Taiwan, because it is one of the 14 countries which have proper formal diplomatic relations with Taiwan. And also another colleague from Saint Lucia in the Caribbean, which is again a small country but which supports Taiwan diplomatically and has formal diplomatic relations. So I'm the only one from India in this delegation, but there are people from Southeast Asia, from Indonesia, that is, and Philippines. There are colleagues from Hungary, from Ukraine, from Spain. There is somebody from France, as I mentioned, Germany, Latvia, of many among many countries, and Colombia, which is in South America. So the whole attempt is to spread awareness about Taiwan and Taiwan's problems created by the People's Republic of China under Xi Jinping, and therefore this debate that I was talking about. And I've heard this word so many times: will Taiwan be invaded by China? So, one school of thought here that I came across was that Taiwan is too important to be invaded or to fail, too big to fail in terms of the manufacturing of semiconductor chips, which are used in almost everything that we use in today's modern world, be it in automobiles, aircraft, our mobile phones, our computers, you name it. And the chips are indispensable. So, the school of thought that says that Taiwan is too important and China will not dare invade Taiwan or destroy Taiwan, because 50% of the chips manufactured in Taiwan are exported to China, because China is a manufacturing hub and it cannot afford to make this mistake. The other school of thought, of course, is that under Xi Jinping, PRC is irrational, and Xi Jinping has the streak of being completely unhinged at times, is what some people believe here. And then, therefore, you cannot predict what action he will take if the push comes to shove in terms of domestic problems in the PRC, and he might then do it to do the unthinkable
of invading Taiwan to distract attention, divert people's attention, and also sort of initiate resurgence of nationalism amongst the citizens of China. But these are all speculations. But despite two contradictory schools of thought, preparations to meet any eventuality are on. The idea in the Taiwan national security thinking is to acquire denial capability. That means if China wants to invade or China wants to attack, it must be denied that space and time to invade Taiwan and take control of key targets or key personnel. Because deterrence is not possible given the asymmetry in size as far as the two countries are concerned. But talking about asymmetry, many lessons are being learned. The Taiwanese are observing think tanks, national security observers, analysts are all observing and analyzing the results or the outcome or the ongoing developments in the Russia-Ukraine war. And there is talk about acquiring asymmetric capabilities. Now, that of course can take Taiwan only that far and no further. But what is evident is that the will of the people is strong. Nobody is panicking. And in fact, as one of the observers had said this to me in August when we were doing a discussion during the crisis itself, and he again reiterated um the thought about what's happening in Taiwan is that there is no panic amongst the people, unlike what had happened in 95, 96, because Taiwan is stronger, both militarily and economically. Its people are also more confident because of their position in the world. They are well educated, they are global citizens, they have talent, they have innovation, they are very good at technology and creating world-class technologically superior products, and therefore uh, the sense here is that one need not panic. China does not have the capability, as one of them put it, to fully invade Taiwan. It's still not sure whether it wants to invade Taiwan. So, that having been said, there is a lot of training that is happening of civilians, interestingly, about military ways and handling weapons, taking lessons from the Ukraine resistance, which was very evident in the early days of the Ukraine war. So there are a lot of civil society organizations which are training people, common people, in handling weapons and giving them military drills. In the official circles too, there is a discussion about increasing the compulsory military service from the current 4 months, which is very token and very preliminary, to between 8 and 12 months, so that more reservists are available when required. Taiwan military otherwise is of very small size, but this is what something that the decision makers are discussing. It is Taiwan, remember, is a technological giant. The innovation that they have shown, the kind of adaptability to new technology, creating green energy products, creating sustainability, and doing looking at resilience of the economy, diversifying its energy needs. All that is being thought about in Taiwan. This is a very smart society. They speak, most of them, we have come across, of course, speak fluent English. They have very sophisticated cyber defenses, and each time there is a cyber attack from China, they are able to not only prevent it but repel it, and therefore they are a forward-looking society. But there is also this anxiousness, as I mentioned, about what will happen if there is an irrational decision taken. There is the other school of thought about how much should the Taiwanese government uh, sort of hold itself back without, or how does it send a signal to China that it means business without provoking China into any precipitate action, is something that is being discussed. The Trade hasn't been impacted. In fact, the 2016 policy of the new southbound policy, as they declared, increasing trade and connectivity and engagement with Australia, New Zealand nations in ASEAN region and in South Asia or in the Indian subcontinent. That policy is paying dividend, as is evident in India very clearly. Rising trade, there is rising engagement amongst think tanks, amongst businesses. I went to one engineering company called Delta Electronics rather, which has at least 4 or 5 big offices in India, in Gurgaon and a couple of them in South India. So the trade between Taiwan and these members of the or the targets or the objectives of the new southbound policy countries has increased by 55% last year. That being said, the Taiwanese are quite sort of close to the United States of America, and therefore it brings its own problems because China thinks that Taiwan is being propped up by a US, and if they can do a lightning strike on Taiwan, US may not be able to come and help Taiwan, is what one of the scenarios says. But all that, as I mentioned, is in the realm of speculation. The important point here is that more and more people are now interested in knowing what's happening in Taiwan. The government is making an effort to reach out to as many countries as possible to give their side of the story. The debate about should Taiwan declare independence and provoke China, or should it just sleeping dogs lie without changing the status quo, continue to progress and develop itself. All these debates are currently swirling in Taiwan, which is a good thing. It's and the biggest, and my final point here is the biggest plus that Taiwan has is that it is a democratic society. Over these nearly 70 plus year or more than 70 years of independence or as a separate nation, Taiwan has now the the kind of democratic values that have been imbibed, embedded into the in the minds of the people here are now more or less permanent, and that makes it a completely different nation than the People's Republic of China, which is, as we know, is opaque, closed door, closed society, and of course, completely a surveillance state. So that's something that even India will be watching very closely. They have a lot of people in private keep talking about the potential of India-Taiwan relationship, taking it to the next level. We've had relations for a long time. There are trade offices in both countries of each other, more or less embassies or diplomatic missions, but they're not formally called diplomatic missions for obvious reasons. And yet, many things are happening here. Many scholars, many students are coming to Taiwan from India to first majorly and mostly learn Mandarin here. Our diplomats, Indian diplomats, are also apparently learning Mandarin here whenever it is possible. But trade is also increasing, and given that Taiwan requires more technical and technological hands for its increasing business activity in the high tech field, diversification of talent from around the world and acquiring talent from around the world is on the cards, unlike earlier years or the previous years. And therefore, Taiwan is becoming all the more better society as a democratic nation, and something that people look forward to. So far, we've had an excellent conversation with some of the technical people, those who are involved in technology innovation, those who are involved in planning for better future for Taiwan. But we hope to have more conversations with people involved in national security planning, those involved in foreign policy. I was very happy to meet Deputy Minister Tien, who was Taiwan's ambassador or representative in India for more than 7.5 years. And we, of course, exchanged notes. He was happy to take the India-Taiwan relationship forward. But Taiwan as a tourist destination is also something that Indians should look at. There are no direct flights right now, but there are good connections via Bangkok and Singapore. So do consider coming to Taiwan. It's a small island compared to China, but a beautiful island nevertheless, and very neat, clean, and very advanced country in terms of technology and application of technology. From my preliminary observations in Taiwan here, that's all I have to say at the moment. But you're going to hear more from more experienced people, more experienced Indians who have been here, who have lived here, who have studied here. So let me first introduce the two and then go to them one by one and get their impression, what they think Taiwan is going through right now. So first up is Suyesh Desai, who is at the moment in a smaller Taiwanese city called Kaohsiung, which is in the southern part of the country. And he came here as a scholar to learn Mandarin, and of course has stayed on to sort of do research on Taiwan China relations, Chinese PLA's actions, and Chinese PLA's current policies. And Namrata Hasija, who is in Delhi but has lived in Taiwan, has studied here, and I'm told is likely to come revisiting Taiwan very soon. Welcome both Suyash and Namrata. I hope I have not made any faux pas in what I have said. So, Namrata, to you first, and then I'll come to Suyash because he is in the country. Your impressions of what Taiwan is going through right now.
Thank you, sir. Like I actually stayed in Taiwan at very crucial junctions. It was 2014-15 when the Hong Kong crisis happened, and there were also elections when actually President Tsai won for the first time. Then again in 2019-20 when the Hong Kong crisis happened, and I saw the movement in Taiwan supporting the Hong Kongers and meeting Hong Kongers in Taiwan, students who were studying, and again election time when President Tsai came, for the second time. So I've seen a change in Taiwan because my first visit was way back in 2012. From then to the last, when I came in January 2020, there's a marked change. And I'm talking about not about officials, I'm talking about common people. Because I had the advantage of knowing Mandarin, and that's how I interacted with common people like taxi drivers, vegetable sellers, and then in my university, students, professors. So initially, many would talk about if one country, two systems can benefit Taiwan, there is no harm, in probably going with it. And this was a class of people who were into Taiwanese media and other things. But after 2014, when the Hong Kong crisis happened, there was a marked change. My professor, usually professors don't give any political statements in Taiwan. So she told me very clearly that we are not going to vote for KMT. We are going to vote for DPP because we don't want to go the Hong Kong way. And with her and of course with others, then the conversation started. And even the youngsters, their parents used to support KMT, but many of them actually left their houses because they had like a fight with their parents that how can you support a party that's going to, that says that we are going to ultimately reunify with China. I am not a Chinese, I'm a Taiwanese. And then 2019 was this major movement. I was there when, in fact, all Taiwanese journalists and people came on roads and they were like, we want to stop this red media. So, of course, red media is all the media houses that have been bought over by mainland and, under the United Front Work Department. So there were so many people on the road, and they were protesting against it. Then there were people supporting Hong Kongers. There used to be, every day in my university, there used to be students with microphones and telling them what's happening in Hong Kong, and how if they don't support Hong Kong now, they will, be the same. So I think, these were the things that I observed, the changes that happened. And I feel every time actually China does something like they did when Pelosi visited, indirectly what they're doing is they're actually strengthening this whole feeling, this
The resolve,
identity.
that is there
Resolve.
amongst people. Yes.
So I think they it's kind of a poetic justice, like the more the aggression they show, it's more, people start associating themselves as, maybe Taiwanese, and the identity gets stronger. So these are like my observations, even,
Sure. Stay on, Namrata. Stay on. Let me get Suyash in here. I will ask him because he's right now living in Taiwan. In fact, he's living in a smaller town. Welcome, Suyash. Please give your background a little bit. How long you've been here? But what Namrata was
Uh,
speaking about was the KMT is one party and DPP is another. For benefit of our viewers, the DPP is the current ruling party. KMT, of course, has the legacy from the Kuomintang, is an old party of Chiang Kai-shek, who actually brought his nationalist government to Taiwan after losing the civil war to the Communist Party of China under Mao. And since 1949, Taiwan was established under him. But of course, his legacy is seen as a mixed kind of legacy for the people of Taiwan. But coming to you, Suyash, please introduce yourself, what you do, and then I'll ask you a couple of questions.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for inviting me. I am Suyash Desai, as you've said. I am a research scholar. Right now, I have taken break. I'm studying research simultaneously. I'm studying language here. I'm already in Taiwan for 9 months now, in a southern capital of Taiwan called Kaohsiung, and I am studying Mandarin, traditional Mandarin here. Traditional Mandarin because all the historic documents are in traditional script. The
Right.
language changed when simplified came, but if you want to read historic documents to understand what happened and what is leading to what is happening today, you need to understand traditional. And Taiwan is the only country studying traditional.
Yeah, so now that you've been here for some time and you lived through the August crisis, uh, give us your impressions about what happened then briefly, and then what do you think has been people's reactions post that crisis, and has it got resolved? I mean, has the resolve got stronger, or there are opinions that are divided? Please let us know.
Sir, I'll divide it into three parts. One is what was happening, what happened, and what is the result. So, what was happening is since Xi Jinping came to power, there is a strategic way of thinking. Step by step, the aggression has gone up. So, for example, in 2019, Xi Jinping dropped the word peaceful. Earlier, they used to use the word peaceful reunification. From 2019 to 2021, they dropped the word peaceful reunification. Then airspace violations started happening in 2020. This was the next step. 2019 was peaceful, dropping peaceful. 2020 was dropping starting airspace violation. When Pelosi visited, median line was crossed. This was the second or fourth time, I don't remember. The first time it was crossed in 1999, and then it was crossed in 2019, and then it was directly crossed in when Pelosi visited. And now, after Pelosi visited, this has been crossed for 600 times in 2 months, just September and October. We have data until October. At least I have seen data until October. So
Sure.
this is a step-by-step aggression that is happening. Taiwan was surrounded on four sides, and exercise happened on all sides. Once China looks for a cause, the Chinese strategic understanding is they look for a reason to normalize something. These were the three steps that were taken. As you have already pointed out, there are a lot of cyber attacks that happens every time. Exercises happen very close to Taiwan. Exercises happened, in fact, very close to where I am there. So in Kaohsiung, there is an island called Shaoliao Cho. The closest point to the of exercise to the island was near Kaohsiung, because Kaohsiung is considered to be a landing operation beach, one of the landing operation area.
Right.
So step by step aggression happens, and it normalizes over a period of time. This is how China works in case of Taiwan, India, every other border country, and this has happened in case of Taiwan during Pelosi's visit. What is the idea? What is the normal populace response to it? Population has been here for a long time. People have been here, gone through various crises. So it's business as usual outside the capital. But in the capital and in the political circles, thinking have slowly started changing, and with the thinking has changed the strategy in which how they would deter China. For example, initially the deterrence was buying. So, for example, in 2000, recently, Taiwanese government ordered MH-60R Seahawk missiles, Seahawk helicopters, and that was rejected by US because now Taiwan is going towards asymmetrical capabilities. Taiwan is going towards building asymmetrical capabilities. Whenever a bigger giant is confronting with a smaller giant, generally you develop asymmetrical capabilities, deterrence by denial. So slowly, the policy of Taiwan has started changing, and they are thinking towards building asymmetrical capabilities. Yes, it will take time. It will take 10 years because uh, policy cannot change in one day. A policy cannot change in 2 days. It takes time. But since 2016 and especially since 2019-20, when Trump administration started doing a lot of trading with Taiwan, slowly and steadily policy has started changing and asymmetrical capabilities are being building. For what is asymmetrical capabilities? For example, in case of naval warfare or in case of landing operation, Taiwan would have to rely on sea mines, radars, anti-ship missiles. So these are the things that Taiwanese government is looking towards. And if you, as you have yourself have pointed out in the past, since 2019, how are Taiwan is slowly and steadily ordering that? But this is what is happening on governmental level. Population level, yes, it's business as usual because this country has gone through a lot of things. This country has seen a lot of crisis, 1995 crisis when Pelosi visited. So they are aware of a problem that is happening, but life goes on as usual within the country.
So you were here during the crisis, right, in Taiwan itself?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
was
So
I
let me
was
get
here during the crisis.
Yeah, so let me get back to Namrata. Namrata, as we are looking at the current state of affairs in Taipei itself, next week there is going to be local elections, not for parliament but local elections, and the trend is showing that it's going to be a kind of a very close contest, and sometimes in the urban areas or the big city like Taipei and a couple of others, the KMT might be sort of making a big splash, if not a win, and which shows that there is still some support that they have. This is what the buzz is here. But in your own experience, do you think the businesses here, the business houses and the big businesses here, like the TSMC and the others who are in the technology front line of technology here, are they worried in any way that China will come and invade, or because they are very well invested in China and expanding, some of them, like they told me, for them it's business as usual. What is your sense?
Sir, if I may, I don't know if I can show you this
Yeah.
cartoon. This
Uh,
was something that was circulating when the Pelosi visit happened and when everything was happening. So, this is from the Taiwanese local media. So, the general feeling also is, I'm not talking about the government, but this is like the local, like the common people. They say that whatever is happening, it's like the bigger game. It's Taiwan is kind of in the middle of it. It's actually US and China. And they were saying the US, of course, is also to an extent using Taiwan. So if like this log, which is Taiwan, so if they're trying to break China with it, the log will also suffer something. You
mm.
know, there will also be damages. So if we say that this is a very monolithic thing that everybody in Taiwan supports DPP, it's not possible because there are multiple layers also.
It's a
Because
democracy, as I mentioned, so it's quite possible. Yeah.
Yes, sir. And also there have been different waves. Like first, of course, are the people who were staying here before Chiang Kai-shek came. Then there were millions of people who came with Chiang Kai-shek. Then now you see that many Taiwanese marry mainlanders. So if you have a mother who's a Chinese, so you grow up differently. Many are marrying Southeast Asian. So there are multiple layers, and there are pockets where they call it, are you blue or are you green? And in green also it's greener, like more like pro independence, or someone who wants to maintain, okay, the status quo is okay, we will not say anything, but they say that we have our own currency, we give visas to people, we have our own elect our own president, so we're already independent, so what are we trying to prove to the
Right.
world? So there are multiple levels here, and that is why what you're saying is correct. That there are pockets that support KMT because they feel that probably whatever is happening, the way DPP is getting more close to the US, and they are having all these things, because there's also a strata of society that's actually being affected. Because when Pelosi came, the Chinese actually hit the agriculture sector. That is a season when pomelos are there in Taiwan. So many farmers who do farming of pomelo, all of that is actually sold to the mainland Chinese. So the government, PRC government, actually banned
True.
importing that. So
Yeah.
there are sections that feel. When I was talking to a taxi driver once, he said, "I want my bread and butter. Whether it comes from ROC or PRC, it doesn't matter to me."
Yeah, so
So
it's a very big dilemma for people. I mean, actually, you're right. I mean, that's what I also hear. I find divided opinion. I also find
yes.
a little vague kind of understanding, or saying that let's get on with life. Why get into all this politics? That is there. But thanks, Namrata, for joining. I wish you the best for your upcoming trip, and of
Thank you
course,
so much.
keep studying Mandarin, and keep studying China and Taiwan. We need more
Thank you.
scholars like you and Suyash and others who I've met here. So all the best for you. So coming back to Suyash, Suyash, you are here in Taiwan itself right now. Um, One last question I want to ask you, and briefly, if you can answer. What is your sense of what's happening in the Taiwan military? Are there US trainers here? I heard today that yes, there are some of them, not in large numbers, but what is the kind of training they're imparting? What is it that the Taiwan military is doing? Because since you also do a weekly newsletter on the PLA military, may not be on the Taiwan military, but what is your sense?
Sir, so yes, in I think in 2020 or 2019, US Marines have been invited. A small section of US Marines has been invited here, and they are training some sections of Taiwanese military. So yes, they are here, and this happened after a very long time. So they were earlier not here. This happened under Tsai Ing-wen DPP's government. Uh,
Hmm.
in sense of Taiwanese military, what exercises they do, what exercises they help in, that is kept very silent. No one knows this except the inner core of the government,
It's a
because this
classified,
can create,
yes,
correct,
yeah.
because this can create a domino. For example, I'm just giving an example. If they are training asymmetrical capabilities, then China might get alert that this is purely directed towards China, though everybody knows. But that is why, to avoid the domino, it is kept completely under the wraps. It could be asymmetrical capability. It could be also training. So, for example, a lot of jets are being imported from China, from the US. A lot of weapons are imported from US. And sir, as you are aware, any infantry or artillery, the personnel used to get familiar with the weapons. It takes few years for after installation to get familiarized with the weapons. Takes a few years, and you need
Sure.
certain kind of training for that. So that could be also be a possibility here, that they are here to train to get to familiarize Taiwanese army to the weapons.
Familiarization with the weapons. You're right, absolutely.
Correct.
So thank you, Suyash, for joining, and all the best to you for what you're doing, and keep doing that study of this region of the language. We need more scholars like you to make us understand what's happening there, because for India too, China is the biggest strategic challenge. So please keep doing what you're doing and do it well. Thank you very much for joining. So,
Thank you.
viewers, as you must have noticed, we have exceeded our normal time, but this was an important topic. Although I have only touched very briefly, is just a kind of preliminary scan of what I observed as a journalist, as an analyst in my 3 4 days of interaction. I'm going to spend a week, as I mentioned, from Sunday to Saturday, and I hope to bring you more insights and more stories into Taiwan and what Taiwan is trying to do vis-a-vis its problems with China, and how, if it is being used by the US to get back at China. All those questions we'll answer in the subsequent reports that I'll be putting together for the benefit of StratNews global viewers. But for the time being, it's goodbye. You know where to reach us. Do give us your feedback and keep watching StratNews Global and, of course, Ask Nitin. For the time being, it's goodbye.